Jump into the journey of you, yeah?
Yeah.
What up, everybody? What's good? Happy Thursday. Thursday, right? Jesus, man, it's just like the week flies by when you're having fun, right? Welcome to the B&E podcast. Welcome to the beginning of the never ending. Today we're going to listen to the beginning of Mr. James Dinh, the life of him, and kind of explore where he was now and what life has been like in your shoes, and it's been really exciting. So obviously this is a live show, so feel free, please, to chime in, and we love to hear you guys, and kind of if you have any questions for Mr. Dinh, you're more than welcome to tune in. And obviously Sarah's going to be sharing this on our stories on YouTube Shorts and Instagram and all that good stuff, so please share it out there, and let's see how many guests we can bring on, kind of viewers, so to chime in to see that. Yeah, so anyway, hello, Mr. James Dinh. How you doing?
Yeah, thanks, Gio, for having me. Thank you, Sarah, for having me as well.
Yeah. No, I'm excited. I mean, it's really, I've already got a kind of glimpse. I'm very lucky enough to be able to kind of talk to you a little bit earlier. So I'm actually really excited to kind of explore more. I had like written down some questions that I was thinking of after you kind of told me a little glimpse of like kind of the lifestyle and life you have had. And so I'm excited to kind of get into it. But as we always do when we start off the show, we love to jump into like the history of you and your family, like where you guys, where like your great grandparents or ancestors came from, and how kind of you landed into California. But yeah, where does it start? Where does it begin?
Yeah, I was born in Vietnam, in Saigon, and it was 1979, so it was right after the Vietnam War. And so, like, historically, it was a crazy time in the United States and also in Vietnam. And Vietnam was like a communist country.
And so, excuse me real quick, all your grandparents, all your family is from Vietnam.
Right. Yeah. So all my ancestors, everything Vietnam. And I was about 2 years old when we had to escape. So and the crazy thing is,
Whoa.
when I talk to my parents and and they'll share glimpses of our childhood, like I lived a really good childhood. We had a 3-story house, had like a maid, like my parents and my grandparents were very successful.
Whoa.
It just shows you how crazy that time was, to where people wanted to escape a communist country.
I'm surprised. So I imagine this is pretty hard to remember vividly, because 2 years old is not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you just got a glimpse of the world for a second. What did you know what your parents did at that time, or what your grandparents did to be so well off out there?
Yeah, I think my grandpa owned like a bike shop. You know what I mean? And if you I guess Vietnam is like a big country where everybody rides bikes, so I'm sure he was very successful at the time. And so,
Did you ever get to meet him?
I did. He lived with us for a while when we moved to California. So I was very fortunate to see my grandparents live with us. And I think that had a big, in my upbringing, when you're around your grandparents as a child and, watching your parents take care of them. So it's kind of like, for me, I always tell my wife, like, hey, if your parents ever want to live with us, that's like not a problem. You know what I mean? Because it's kind of, I just grew up watching my mom and dad take care of their parents.
So my question here is, can you describe kind of like the personality your grandparents had? I don't know how much you remember.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know that much, because I think, we kind of touched on this a little bit. Like, my biggest regret was not knowing a lot about my family history and my culture. Like, I barely even know how to speak Vietnamese. And because when you move to America, like, my parents were always like, hey, we're so fortunate to be here. Like, we want you to know English. And that's why I have like zero accent. When I came to America in the early 90s, early 80s, it was just like right off the bat, I was excited because it was like cartoons.
Yo.
You know what I mean? It's different than now, right? Like, we watched, like, it was like the golden age of, you're talking about Transformers, G.I. Joe, you had all these different cartoons that you were able to watch, and that's how I learned English, was just straight up watching cartoons
Oh
all
wait,
the time.
because your parents probably don't know too much English at this time as well.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
So wait, so when you mean like escape, you mean like you had, there was no prepping, there was no,
Right.
what was that kind of transition from leaving Vietnam and coming to the Americas?
Yeah, so, my parents being well off, they had the money, and so a couple other families, they had to pretty much purchase like a boat, like a trip on, like a skate boat, and we had to leave in the middle of the night. And the story goes like I was like a very crying type of kid. I don't know if it was colicky, but I was like crying in the middle of the night, so they were afraid. So if you get caught, you're going to jail type of thing. And so they had to escape in with a couple families in the middle of the night in a boat. My mom was pregnant at the time with my brother Joe, and we were talking about being in the middle of the ocean type of thing. And we were discovered by a naval ship. It was a German naval ship. So I grew up in Germany for a couple of years.
What?
Yeah, a small little town called Zeilemein. It's by Munich, I think 200 kilometers. And we were taken in by a family, like a sponsorship, like the Catholic Church. And then so like we were like, the crazy thing is, people back then, when they look at the television screens of the Vietnam War, it was just like jungle people. Think like the book, like they think you're like Mowgli. Is that
Yeah, no,
yeah,
no,
they
I
think
understand
like
what you
you're
mean.
like loincloth, like jungle people
Yeah.
swinging from like the vines of the tree, because that's the image that was portrayed to a lot of people. And so it's crazy, but that's the perception of a lot of the boat people that left, like a whole generation of people. So I grew up in a little town in Germany, and I don't know any German, but I just know like two words, like Auf Wiedersehen and like Dummkopf, which means
So this is like all your trust is in this church in a way. Like
Right.
you don't speak German.
Right.
I don't think anyone in your family
Yeah.
at this point speaks
you
German.
nailed it.
And you spend there for years. That's on and you travel on a boat. I mean, that's literally like putting your hands in,
Yeah,
just in faith. Like
Right.
you're floating around in a way,
right. And my mom was pregnant too.
Jeez.
And what's crazy is like when you grow up, you don't realize the sacrifices of your parents.
Yeah.
And then it gets revealed to you in bits and pieces. And I remember one time my mom revealed to us, like, you guys don't realize how lucky you have it, because I was pregnant in the ocean where people died. You know what I mean? And not only do we survive, but it's a lot of faith that has to be in that situation, to take everything from to leave a country, go to a country you have no idea what the language is, where people's perception of you is of being people from the jungle, and to start a new life. So sometimes we think we have it like bad, like, oh, I moved from this state to that state, or whatever, or
Yeah,
moved from
yeah.
this county to that county. But imagine uprooting your whole life and your culture and starting all over in a country like you have no, language. You just, yeah.
So so you family transitions from Germany just straight to
Right.
America. Okay.
Right. So we flew, got our citizenship or whatever it is. Like, I don't know if it's considered first your green card or whatever.
Sure.
it is, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So we go to Orange County. I grew up in Fullerton.
Wow.
And and I started off in kinder. So I was like supposed to be in first grade, but my parents wanted me to learn English from scratch, like start from scratch. So I was always just 1 year older than everybody, like 6 years old and everybody's five.
Right.
Yeah.
How can you kind of explain your childhood in terms of your parents and the type of dynamic that they kind of raised you?
Yeah. So when we moved to the United States, it was kind of about figuring out like a profession for my dad. So my parents like worked at the swap meet. And so they sold shoes, the Santa Fe Springs swap meet. I don't know if you have ever heard of that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And so as a kid, I would go like on Sundays. Like that was like my duties on Sunday to help him at the swap meet. My brother did Saturday. And so we would like wake up, I mean, Sunday morning, like 6 probably or 5,
Hustling.
like in a small black truck with flames. It was like one of those 90s rock band trucks. So it's so funny. And then like, like boxes of shoes, and I'd be crammed in the front, and you'd help dad set up and sell shoes as a kid. And but my parents were always very educated. Like they were teachers when they were in Vietnam, and they knew like they picked up German, they learned English, and they learned Spanish because the clientele at the swap meet a lot of times is different nationalities, but they had to learn Spanish as well. So they know like 4 languages. That's really why I'm saying that.
So, yeah, and I imagine sometimes I'm very kind of, this is the ignorant world I'm coming from. So, I remember sometimes it's kind of confusing, right? Seeing your parents at one point. I mean, obviously you weren't too vivid there, but to see them as teachers, but now you kind of see them as like business owners in a way, right? Well, you kind of always like looked up to them. Where is it kind of like a wholesome relationship between you and your parents? Was it what was that dynamic like?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, because really I was very embarrassed actually as a child, because we grew up in Fullerton, and we lived in like the flatlands of Fullerton. So just every city, every neighborhood, they have your good parts and the bad parts.
Yeah.
We lived in the bad parts next to like Hunt's factory, where there's a railroad, and all the kids got in trouble. Like that was my friends, and my parents were just like down to earth, really good, salt of the earth people. Very simple. They came from a village type of thing. They worked at, and all they ever did was want us to focus on school and not worry about other things. So we never felt poor, even though I knew I was poor. And so my dynamic was always of high regard for my parents, because my dad is the oldest of his siblings. And I would, anytime I talked to my cousins or anybody else, they were like, dude, your dad is like the man. Like, and I didn't know that growing up. I was like, how are we he's the man. But like, we work at the swap meet, and I remember being like super embarrassed about it when I saw one of my friends at the swap meet. Like I hid in the van. Like I remember seeing it, you know what I mean? But it's crazy. The dynamic was always me. Like to this day, there's no other person I respect as much as my dad. Like I don't put anybody on a pedestal, but my parents I hold high regard, because like to go through all that to get your kids in position to have a great life, and the sacrifice as a parent, that's like a really good, role models to have in life.
Yeah.
When you see the sacrifice, and they just retired last year. So I'm like, dude,
wow.
I mean, like, hey, they didn't do that bad when you can just retire, and so I have a great relationship with both my parents, but my dad doesn't speak as much English. My mom knows a lot of English. Like it's like easy to talk to her in English. So that's my biggest regret, is I wish that they made me take Vietnamese classes when I was a kid. I wish I could speak to my dad in Vietnamese, but like I just kind of understand here and there, and I respond in English to them.
This is something I never heard before. Yeah. One of the things I've noticed is that through the business that I do, I interact with a lot of people who speak Spanish, right? And obviously it's very close, right? You literally you can drive there in a few hours if you want to, right? But one of the things that makes it really interesting is that there's not like this huge, gigantic Vietnamese community, right? Like, this is kind of like a transplant, right? Like you don't have like thousands upon thousands of people part of your community as like you do with Spanish. So the only way you can really learn is within the home, right? Like the kind of the Vietnamese type of space. Right. But the fight of your parents of trying to get you to be as successful as possible in this environment, because they wanted the best life for you. They sacrificed even having being able to communicate with you, just so that you can have a better future. Like that's like, that's like awesome. Like it's I imagine it must be hard for them as well. Kind of like it's like a
because I mean, like we didn't grow up in the best part. Yeah, we grew up in Orange County, but like just like anywhere, you could be like, this is the bad part of Hollywood, I believe. You know what I mean? There's like, you know, and so what I'm trying to say is that like it was hard for them because they, I don't know if the term is called latchkey kids or something like that. Like, but like, you know, a lot of kids in the 80s and 90s, the parents worked, and it was a transition from our country in the United States where it used to be, you know, for example, the mom was always at home taking care of the family, and now both parents are working. So, you know, for us, like I was the oldest. I have two younger brothers, and with them, like, you know, I had to be the one that was taking care of them, you know, while my parents were working and all that stuff like that.
What is the kind of dynamic between you and your brothers and sisters?
So I have two brothers, Joe and Martin. My brother Joe actually just died, you know, within the last year. And then my younger brother, Martin. And, you know, it was hard growing up because I was at one point took care of them while my parents were working, you know. And another part, I was also trying to discover myself. And I was lucky to be kind of liked by a lot of people growing up. And so I had a lot of friends and hung out with the popular group. But I felt like you know, when you get that kind of like, not success, but you're like, you forget about your brothers. You want to live your own life. Right. You know, and I wish I was a better brother. You know, just like I wish I was a better son. Like meaning New Vietnamese, was able to communicate with my parents more. Right. Yeah. I wish I was a better brother in terms of like showing them the ropes of you know, oh, this is how you talk to girls, or this is what you need to do in a bully situation with them. You know, because I was the oldest, and so it's kind of like I'm just discovering things myself.
You're trying to figure this out all night. Yeah.
So, you know, I wish I was closer to both of them than I was, you know, because I look at other people with really great dynamics with their brother and sisters, like, oh, my brother's my best friend or whatever, or my sister's my best friend. Right. Like I never really had that. So part of me, I felt like a little bit selfish.
What type of personality how would you explain yourself as a kid? Like the type of character that you kind of played?
Yeah, I think the best word is like a rule follower. I was always kind of like, you know, like the teacher telling me to do this, like I would do exactly that. You know, decently good student, you know, and so that's kind of the type of person I always was, the person that followed the rules. And it's not until you get older where you have like that shift where you're like, okay, I'm gonna be selfish now. I'm gonna be like, I want to be me, and I'm gonna be more truthful. See, there's a reason why older people like they're unfiltered. You know, somebody in their 60s, 70s, 80s, like they'll just say whatever comes across their mind. Yeah. Because as you get older, you kind of start realizing that like who really cares what other people. Because I always cared too much what people said when I was growing up. But very sensitive.
What's interesting though is that you were kind of a part of the kind of popular group. You know, right. Fullerton is. I mean, man, now Fullerton. I imagine when you were a kid versus now is like a whole new world. Like, you know, it's like, you're talking about some of these families are like rich, you know, really, really nice, well-off people.
Right.
But you're able to kind of assimilate in a way. I don't know what the community looks like around there, but were you kind of like the only Asian friend type of thing, or was it more of like you had really diverse amount of people and you were able to get along with a lot of individuals, and school life was pretty enjoyable?
Yeah, it's diverse. Actually, Fullerton's very known in the Korean community.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because a lot of families from, for example, Korea, they'll buy homes in Fullerton. The kids go to school. So when I was growing up in the 90s, like Sunny Hills was my high school. It was like a top nationally ranked high school, like top 100 in the country. And my school was predominantly, I'd say it was like 50% Caucasian, and like the other 50% was nationalities like Korean, Asian, Indian, so, but it was funny because when I grew up, most of my friends were like the white kids, so I played football and I did all that and partied just like everybody else. And so I was very like even like the girls I dated like were white, like what I mean. It was just kind of like I was they call it Twinkie, like yellow on the outside, white on the inside.
Yo,
I felt like I was a Twinkie, which is funny. My wife is Korean, so it kind of like always go back to your roots.
so so yeah, you're obviously you're in school. It seems like you like sports and stuff as well. You're hanging out with a lot of different people. Any key friends during this time?
Yeah, my best friends who are still to this day: Adam Rodriguez, Grady Funk, Paul Rodenberg, Milan Patel, who we don't really talk to anymore. He's Indian, but he kind of left out. We were like called the Borrachos, the five Borrachos, and in Spanish that means like the drunks. And we I remember just like us partying and as kids and getting like Pabst beer at the grocery store or liquor store is like $5. Everyone chipping in a couple dollars. But those are my best friends, and I still talk to them. I just talked to Grady yesterday. He called me, and so it's cool to see your friends growing up. We all played football together.
Yo.
And so we still talk, and our families hang out, not as much as often as you like, because as you get older, you're just so focused on your own family.
Sure, yeah.
That it's like you don't get to hang out with them as much. But I'm glad because they're all successful in their own right in their own life. So it's kind of cool to see us all succeed in our own different path. Yeah.
And can you kind of describe their personalities as well?
Yeah. Adam is funny. So Adam was the most popular kid in school. Right? So as a freshman, as a sophomore, Adam like dated like the hottest cheerleader. And so we're like, score, dude, like he's the first one that rounded the bases, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so, and he was a stud in football. He was our running back. And Adam right now, he's a fire chief.
Oh, wow.
And so you could tell like he always had that alpha personality. And, his parents had, we all grew up in Fullerton. So his parents had the party house. We'd all go over there. His dad, bless his soul, is in heaven now, Benny, would always play the guitar. And we would go and we would sing like songs. Like his dad like was just like one of those guys that was the coolest dad. Like, stories upon stories to share. He'd play his guitar. We would sing all the oldies songs, with his dad. And Paul, he's a ER doctor right now.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
And he made like the top 8% or whatever it is of schools. So he was always like the uber successful guy. His wife is like the number one realtor in like Seal Beach. So they're just like uber successful. And Paul, his dad is a pastor. His dad passed away as well, so bless his heart, his soul. And so Paul is funny. He's very like the extreme guy in the group, meaning like we would be at a bar and he would like yell at top of his lungs like "woo," and the whole bar would be like, "Who's this guy?" So he was always that like and he was very he became prom king.
Yo.
Yeah, so like he went to St. Mary's and played football. So he played collegiate.
Whoa.
And big dude, and just like obviously uber genius. Grady, I Grady is I connect with Grady the most nowadays in our old age because we went through a run of being single the most because like Paul and Adam got linked up. Adam married his high school sweetheart Jen, and we're all still friends to this day. But like but Grady was our wide receiver, like tall, good-looking white guy. Like he was like the slayer of the group. Like he was like he went to San Diego State, so like he's just that San Diego, and he was that cool, like when Top Gun Maverick, like,
yo,
all goodling white guys at some point would dress up as Maverick or Goose. That's like your thing you got to do, right?
Yeah.
And like he was dressing up as Maverick back in college, and like he like grows out this like most phenomenal beard. So he's like the best looking guy of the group. But like and it's funny because like we'd go out and like he would always get the chicks, but I would always be a good wingman, like I wasn't afraid to talk to anyone. but yeah, he did like triathlons.
Jeez.
Yeah, like crazy dude, like crazy athlete doing all these things like that. And he still surfs and does all that stuff like that. So it's funny because we all have like different personalities.
Yeah.
And different things in our dynamic that make our group like the way it is.
So you're obviously kind of transitioning out of high school. Was it hard for you kind of leaving? Because I don't know where did you go to school? I apologize.
Sunny Hills. That's my high school, Sunny Hills.
And college? I don't know if it's just.
I went to Cal State Fullerton.
Oh, because you were close. Oh, perfect.
I just kind of just like stayed. I went to like OCC for a little bit. It's a community college.
Sure.
Because I actually, my first major was I wanted to be an actor for some reason.
Hey.
I think in high school I was like a secret drama geek. Like I took some drama classes that was kind of decent. And my drama teacher was like, "Hey, you're pretty good. You want to try out for this play?" And I always be like, "Nah, I'm good." But like secretly, like I liked.
You were down.
I love movies just like anybody. I'm the type that like will see like a commercial for a movie and someone asks me about the movie, I'll tell them exactly like, "Did you see it?" I'm like, "No, just saw a commercial about it." Like what I mean? Like the trailer of it. Like I have that kind of weird memory. And so I went to OCC to be an actor. I remember talking to my mom, and that's what's so important about having good parents that support you. Like my parents never made us feel like we couldn't accomplish anything. That's the greatest thing about them. And I learned as being a parent, like wanting to give my child like confidence no matter what. So my first semester was like, like let me try to be an actor type of thing. And then I realized I'm like, I don't know if this is like a real future. And knowing that my parents were once teachers in Vietnam. So my parents were teachers in Vietnam back in the day. And then so I was like, okay, you know what? Like I'm actually pretty good with teaching, and I had worked in college I had worked for the City of Fullerton Community Service Department. So like the city has a department that's like funded, and what they do is they go to after-school programs. Like we do after-school programs. So like a school would have an after-school program. We'd help the kids with like studying and doing activities and all this stuff like that. And so I was like, man, I'm really good at like
educating.
And I was mentoring. Like the site lead, and like we came up with all these cool things to keep the kids busy after school. And I was like, hey, like I don't hate kids. Like my parents were teachers. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's like some people just hate kids. And I was like, hey, I'm actually pretty good at this. So then I went to Cal State Fullerton. My major was liberal studies to be a teacher. That was my initial job. But in life we changed. Now I'm in mortgages and I get to teach people. That's a cool thing.
And tell us about that, because profession is something that is really interesting. Because when you're in school, and obviously you're a football player, right? So like you don't have to really kind of worry about so much like what am I gonna do with my life, right? But definitely when college hits, that's when you really start like, shoot, I got to figure this out. Like, what am I going to do? Like, kind of with what is my trajectory of my life? And it's crazy how the kind of soul of your parents kind of crept in. And by this time, you already knew the kind of the story, what happened with your parents, right? And what they used to do back in Vietnam. So how did they feel about this? Was they even more, or was it just still the same? Hey, we're going to support you. We're going to make something.
Same. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
They were happy because it was kind of like the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree.
Yeah.
And it's a great profession. It's very honorable. And so I was going to school to be a teacher. And, they were just happy because, like college was always something that they wanted.
Yeah.
But with my own child, as you get older now, it's kind of like you wish you were taught more about finances at an early age. So when you grow up, like my family, it's always like you got to be careful with how we look at money, because like if you're being taught like money's the root of all evil, money doesn't fall from a tree, and you're looking at negative aspects of money, then you don't realize the benefits money can do for not only society but your family and other people.
Yeah.
You have more impact when you have money. So like nowadays, I want to teach my son more about finances, saving money, the importance of investing, this and that, because I wasn't taught that. I was more taught to have humble like background, to be humility, like you don't need money, it's more about this. And as I grew up as a teacher, I was kind of like, wait a minute, money is actually kind of important.
Sure. Yeah.
Because you don't get paid as much being a teacher. That's just the reality of it.
What was the life of it, like you being a teacher? Because I imagine college life is within itself, I think, where you kind of really find out who you are. You were mentioning when you were young that you were kind of like this by the books. You did what you're supposed to do. You listen to the rules. Do you kind of still feel the same way, your college life? Do you kind of still feel like this is who I am? Or do you feel like you're starting to become something different?
Yeah. So the funny thing was so Adam went to Cal State Fullerton with me briefly, and then he went to San Diego State with Grady. But while he was there with me, he was approached by a fraternity, Sigma Pi. And they were like the jocks of the group of all the fraternities, I think. Well, there were a couple other jocks, but they were like the rowdier, get drunk and get in bar fights kind of guys.
Right.
And they're like, hey man, like, let's go to a party. And I'm like, nah, dude, you're going to be a frat. Like, whatever, bro. It's like, no, just come to a party. They're trying to recruit me, and they said, bring a friend. I don't want to go by myself, so I go. And they had this party called Around the World Party. I guess it was a very well-known party back then. So they have a fraternity house, and every room they turn into another country. Oh. So like you go to like a room, and it would be like Thailand, so you have to take like shots, like, you know what I mean? And then you go to like another country, and it's the drink of that country.
Yeah.
Every country has. So I was like, man, bro, like this party is dope.
Yeah.
You need to join this frat. Like, by the way, if you're in fraternity, you never say the word frat. It's like disrespectful, I guess. So I was like, yeah, you got to join them, man. And he's like, I don't want to do it unless you do it. And when you're like 3 Sambuca shots in deep or whatever, what I mean, you're just like, yeah, let's do it. And then so like I pledged like that day. They took me up to the chapter room, and they're like, okay, you guys are pledges and yada yada. And then the funny thing enough, I became president of that fraternity. One day I became president of that fraternity, but I was always like that, like calm, like
sure.
Like, and that's the reason why I became the president of fraternity, is because like they needed somebody that was kind of responsible, and like, and then like so it was funny having that background of being a fraternity president. But I never took advantages of being a fraternity president.
Sure, yeah,
I wish I did.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're supposed to get a whole bunch of chicks and all that stuff like that. But like, nah, dude, I was kind of like just by the books, and just wanted to make sure that we weren't suspended from campus for fighting and all that.
It's so interesting. It sounds like you're kind of like, you're right. Like you have this you kind of have this soul of just wanting to, I don't want to say protect, right? But like, I think it maybe, I don't know if maybe at this time you kind of feel this, but you're mentioning now that like you being the older brother, like you come from this space of like, man, I want to be like, I want to make sure that I kind of lead by example in a way. Right. And it's really cool now that you becoming a teacher. And what, I don't know what when becoming a teacher,
right.
What did you teach? Like what grade levels?
I taught elementary school. Mm. So I taught 6th grade. I even taught 7th and 8th. And my last year teaching, I was a 4th grade teacher. Mm. Yeah, so it was cool teaching kids But at the time too, I was kind of like young and single, and I was like looking to meet my future wife type of thing. And so for me, it was just an interesting part of my life where I was very responsible as a teacher, and then I also like was, partying with my friends. I think we had mentioned during that time, like it was around that 2010, 11, where it was like the EDM phase, where like everybody was going out to clubs and house music, and so I had this like duality to my personality.
You have this side of you where you're kind of being the example of like trying to show these kids like, hey, look, making sure they have a good future, and kind of like having the, I don't know, embodying your parents in a way, right?
Right.
But you kind of have all this other side. It's like, man, I kind of need to find a partner. And I got, these friends who are like super wild, and like they bring you to this whole new, traveling the world, and you're part of this fraternity, and you're the leader of it too, right? So like you don't want to just leave that behind, right? Yeah, can you tell me about that, like that lifestyle that now you're living? Like what was kind of your what was some of the big events during this time being a teacher, and I guess partying and seeing the world,
Yeah, it's like, when you go out, let's say, and you're, now I'm in my 20s, and you go out to bars and stuff like that, like you start realizing, like, wait a minute, like being a teacher is like a moodle. You ever heard of moodle? It's like a man poodle, right? You're like eternally in the friend zone. You know what I mean? We've all been in the friend zone, and every guy out there hates being in the friend zone. And that's when you start realizing, like, man, I've been like in the friend zone most of my life. And then so when you meet girls and you have a good time and you meet them, it's kind of like, well, why ain't they calling me back? Why ain't they going on the date? It's because you drive a Honda Civic and you're a teacher and you don't make a lot of money. And I love being a teacher. I was like the best teacher.
Yeah.
Every year, everybody was like, I want to be in Mr. Dinh's class. All the students. I was like the cool young teacher. But then I was like, wait a minute, like, I can't meet, like, a good girl. And growing up in Orange County is hard.
Yeah.
Because you think about it, like, people have all these choices. It's kind of like, if you're a girl, like, it's not like growing up in the Midwest or somewhere else. You know what I mean? Where, like, people here just have a very superficial mindset. And so when they found out I was, like, a teacher, a lot of girls would be like, he's cool, but, like, that's not for me or
sure,
whatever. Yeah. And so that was kind of like, and what made me change, the reason why I left teaching was like, okay, so during the summers, my friends would be in the mortgage industry. They were like going to Vegas or going to Miami, going to see like Afrojack in Miami, and just like going to Vegas and seeing like Cascade and all stuff like that. And like me, on a teacher salary, I wasn't able to do that. You know what I mean? Like I would be able to go to like bars and clubs, of course I did, but like to travel and just go on like week-long trips,
sure,
I can't
yeah,
do that. Like I can go out Friday, Saturday, but not like a whole week,
Yeah.
That's not, I was always a great responsible teacher. And then so I work in the mortgage industry in the summer, and then I'd see my friends uber successful, and they're like, hey man, like we had a like a heart to heart. Everybody was just like, hey man, like what do you think you're worth? And that's crazy when someone asks you that question. Right?
Yeah.
What do you think you're worth? Like, throw out a number.
Right.
I'm like $100,000, let's just say.
Right.
And then
right.
I was like, well, how much do they pay you? Like 50, 60K as a teacher. It's like, do you think you're worth 50 or 60K? I'm like, no, I feel like I'm worth more. I have more to life than that salary or whatever it is. And so that was my like awakening. That was like the seed that was planted that like maybe like there's something else. Because during that time, we had just gotten out of the 2008 market crash. And so everybody was affected by it. Teachers were having pay freezes. So it wasn't like I was making all this extra money. It was just like, hey, like there's not a lot of money for anybody during that time. And then so then that was kind of the seed that was planted, like, hey, maybe like teaching is not what I want to do the rest of my life.
So I kind of know a glimpse of this kind of phase as well. You mentioning traveling, going to kind of see Afrojack and stuff like that. What was kind of the professions that you were looking at outside of teaching?
Yeah, it's just like kind of like mortgages, but like it was funny. Like I think I was telling you earlier, like during that time, my friends were making fun of me. Like, what do you do? Like, I just play Madden and I teach. Excuse me. So I didn't have like any hobbies. You know what I mean? I wasn't like playing football anymore. I wasn't good anymore. Getting older. And then so one day we went to LA, Hollywood. They're like, "Oh, come see this DJ with us." And I'm like, DJ? Because, I grew up in the 90s. It's like Tupac, Biggie, East Coast, West Coast rap. And then the pop phase hit, like the NSYNCs, the Britney Spears, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So music was kind of going through like a weird transition. And I think people were kind of sick of the whole like produced pop culture they were being fed. And, hip hop wasn't quite the same hip hop it was as me growing up.
Yeah.
Seeing like these great rappers and all stuff like that. So like, oh, let's go see this DJ's name is Steve Aoki. I'm like, a DJ? What do you mean? Like, that doesn't make sense. To pay for money to go see a DJ, like, all this and that. So I see Steve Aoki, and like he's going up on stage, and like he's standing up on like, the top, and the crowd goes crazy, and I'm just like, dude, that's so cool. Like I want to do that. You know what I mean? And so it was kind of funny. Like the next day, I went to like Guitar Center, bought little mini MIDI player, and just to play around with it, like thinking like that's like cool and but it, and then my other buddy at the time, Daniel David, and we worked together in the mortgage industry. He was just like, dude, like he used to be a big club promoter, and it's like, hey, let's practice, let's make some songs. I was like,
yo,
and then my buddy, who was also like super rich man, so successful, he's just like, hey man, it's my party coming up. I'm gonna rent out a club. You guys need a DJ. And like we're like here embarrassed, like, dude, okay. And then so he saw a somebody at Guitar Center that was a DJ, and he offered to like for $300 each to teach us lessons. And we're like, okay, screw it. Like, let's learn.
Yeah.
Let's learn how to like DJ. And then we went to this guy's like house, and he had like this shed, and like just smoked like packs of cigarettes in his shed. And he was just like, hey man, you guys want to learn how to DJ, or like you want to be a bedroom DJ, or you want to be a real DJ? And we're like, what's a bedroom DJ? The guys that fake it, like, like bust out a laptop, this and that. Like nothing wrong with that, but I'm just saying like, so the European DJs, like the David Guettas, the Avicii.
Yeah, Afrojack, yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, Afrojack.
Like
they all bring like
Three House. What was it? Three House Mafia. What is it?
Yeah,
yeah. Swedish House Mafia.
Swedish House.
Yeah.
Swedish House Mafia, which was my favorite DJ group ever, and they totally motivated me because they made the whole lifestyle of a DJ like feel like a celebrity.
Yeah.
And so like he taught us how okay, we want to learn the legit way. So he, every DJ, every club has CDJs, and it's not about bringing crates of music. It's like everything's in a flash drive.
That's it.
And so you have to learn how to beat match and all that stuff like that. So he taught us how to beat match, how to do this. Long story short, we play our buddy Min's. I'm still good friends with Min today. I spoke to him yesterday.
Yo.
He was actually my motivation when it came to social media and TikToks and all that.
Shout outs to him.
Yeah. So we'll talk about Min a little bit. But long story short, like we party, we DJ as party, like we had all the cues written on a piece of paper. Like, okay, like at 2 minutes and 58 seconds, I'm going to put in the next song. Like, we're just learning it on the fly. And then like a club promoter was there, and he was just like, hey man, why don't you guys open for Sander Van Doorn, who's like a world famous DJ.
Yeah.
Sutra. So Sutra is one of the most popular clubs in Orange County. It's in Costa Mesa. They're no longer Sutra. They're called Time now. But they had a run where like all the DJs DJ'd there. Calvin Harris DJ'd there.
Jeez.
We're talking about the top of the top.
Yeah.
DJ'd. Even I think Cascade was there one time. I'm sure they've gotten Cascade. So
maybe Dead Mouse if he can snuff.
Yeah,
he's hard to get in.
Yeah,
that.
Exactly. Like I swear they probably had a chance to get the guys from Sutra. all those promoters, they even got Marshmello before Marshmello
Yo.
was famous. Yeah, he didn't DJ, I don't think, at Sutra, but he did it at one of their events. that
Sure.
they had. Right. So yeah, we're like, oh shoot, like we're gonna open for like Sander Van Doren. So we bought like all the we bought the CDJs, we committed to it. Every day I'd practice. And so like I was teacher by day, and on the weekends I would DJ. But like you weren't making any money though.
No, yeah.
Like we were lucky, we hung out with a lot of ballers, and so they would get bottle service. So it was a big time when it came to bottle service and all stuff like that. And so we would get a big crew that would always get bottle service. So I think we were able to draw a lot of people. We even headlined at Sutra. So we opened for like Chucky, DJ Chucky, Laid Back Luke. We've opened for a lot of big DJs back then, and we even headlined there. So yeah, I at one phase I wanted to be an EDM DJ, but then I realized, man, like the music just gets harder and harder. Like,
Yeah,
you have to be so good, and like it was progressing into like trap music, and like we would put a little hip hop in, but like the music just progressed so much, and you had to do so much to maintain that audience's attention.
Yeah.
That
It takes work.
it takes a lot of work. So I did that for a while. I was like, we were pretty serious about wanting to do it full time and produce and all that stuff, but we just never did, because life happens, and we start meeting our significant others and kids and all that, and so we kind of had to retire that.
So you're looking back, right? Because at this time, I think this is where you meet your wife now, right?
Yeah.
You're a kid from Vietnam.
Yeah.
Who immigrated to Germany. that kind of was just, transplanted to a kind of flatland Fullerton. Your parents are hardworking, in a swap meet, selling shoes, trying to find a way to be able to put, make ends meet. You have your family living with you as well. You can't really obviously have the best communication with them. You don't have that Vietnamese, but you're working hard, and you're a humble person. You're going through high school, with some of the top people in the school, and you're not being intimidated. You have this humility, like, hey, look, I'm going to become a teacher, and obviously be an actor. And I think this is kind of where the EDM kind of side comes in, right? But like you're exploring this new life, right? Kind of looking back into like, that being, that life that, at this moment, what was kind of the feeling here? Like, where you have, are you like feeling like, man, I wish I made some different things? Or are you kind of like, wow, just look how far I've come, like to this point of like, before you kind of get married and into this, kind of mortgage life and having kids on that side?
Right. Yeah. Cause at the time it's like, that's how I say California is tough, right? It's always like keeping up with the Joneses. Like you feel like you have a lot, or you're successful, but there's always someone bigger and better that has more money or is more successful. And during that time, it's funny because like now I'm in the house music scene, DJing. Now I'm getting chicks. That's what's funny about it. Because right? You realize like, oh man, like chicks like DJs. I wonder why. You know what I mean? Like, and people would ask me to DJ their after parties all the time and this and that. And it was just funny because and then it became easy to meet chicks, because I would just be like, oh, hey, come to our show. Like, and then you're like headlining, you know what I mean? Like, there's like thousands of people like cheering for you, and you know what I mean? So it became like, man, this is easy. Like I got this figured out.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then, so during that time, so this is why I left teaching, right? So what happened was, I remember there was a teacher at my school, right? And man, this guy was like uber successful. Everybody wanted to be his class. He was teaching. So at the time I was a 4th grade teacher in Diamond Bar, and like everybody wanted to be in this particular teacher's class. And he was there like 20 something years. And I remember being in the library, and I see like the old pictures. This school has been around for a while.
Right.
And I'm like, bro, this guy looks like a young Marlon Brando. Like, this is a handsome dude.
Right.
Like, wow, I could see why he was like the most popular teacher. He's now like in his 50s and 60s or whatever it is, right? And then one day he got in trouble because he kind of grabbed a kid by his sweater because the kid didn't do his homework. Right? And then they kind of like forced him to retire. And here I am as the new young kid on the block. Everybody wants to be Mr. Dihn's class. I'm sitting at his retirement, man. And
my bad.
That's all good. And you're sitting in his retirement in the school cafeteria.
Hey, Sarah, that was Rolando. Can you hit him up? Thank you. Sorry. Continue.
So like you're like in the school cafeteria for someone that dedicated their whole life. And like all they gave him was like a plaque. Like, hey, thanks for serving. Like,
jeez.
No trip to Hawaii. Like no send off. You know, like no doves flying from the rafters type of thing. Off of like one mistake. Like it was a big mistake because you don't lay hands on kids, of course. Like, dude, you don't. Like that's not cool whatsoever. But as a teacher, I know that like there are many moments where a kid could make you feel like so mad because they don't listen or they cuss or they did this or that. And I just saw the teaching profession change. You know, I saw it became more of like a dog and pony type of thing. Like you had to teach towards standards, and the kids had to recite why they had to learn this lesson, and it became like no longer like you have to know 5 times 5 is 25. Like, it's just you have to know your multiplication. It became like, oh, let's explain what 5 times 5 is. Let's say you have a party and you invite 5 of your friends. Each one gets 5 pieces of candy. And, you know, it became more of like a dog and pony show, right? And I love teaching. I still get to be a teacher as a mortgage professional to this day. I teach clients about the loan process. But I was very worried that what if one day I snapped? What if one day I got mad at a student and I cussed at them, you know, because I was mad or having a bad day.
Yeah.
And so that was very eye-opening. So I left like in 2011, and I just kind of told my parents like, hey, you know, I think I'm going into mortgages and just to try to make more money and like, you know, raise a family of my own. Because, you know, as a teacher, you weren't making a lot of money and you just weren't getting the respect that you should be for that profession.
No, I feel it. Yeah, no, I mean.
So yeah, it's kind of like the ghost of Christmas Future. Past.
Yeah, no, huge.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like the ghost of future came and showed me like, hey, this is what your life could look like, and I was just, man, I don't want to be sent off like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I kind of have 3 directions I want to take this. So, but I'll see if I could take it like chronologically here. So that transition from kind of leaving the kind of teaching world into going into like the mortgage profession. You know, how did your family feel about that? I know your 2 brothers you were trying to get more closer to as well, and they're probably seeing you like, you know, this new 2 lives, and like, oh my God, look at my brother, right? But as well as like, man, they see you also being kind of a teacher as well, and I imagine your parents coming from that profession as well. Was it kind of hard for them, or was it like, hey, no, just keep doing what you're doing, and that supportive like type of mentality?
Yeah, do you know, they had like the full faith in
that
me.
Is crazy.
Yeah, that's what's crazy. I look back and I'm like, that's why I call my parents like saints. They're like living day saints, man. They like, you can do no wrong in their eyes. You know what I mean? Of course, no one's perfect. You know, obviously, as parents, they're not perfect. I'm not perfect. But in terms of their mentality of like, yeah, you can do it. Right. Just like when I told my mom I want to be an actor. Sure. You know what I mean? You want to be a teacher? Sure. We're going to support you. I really want to be like that father to my son, my sons. You know what I mean? So like, they were totally cool with me going into the mortgage profession, starting my own career in that path. Yeah.
And your brothers and your 2 brothers. Sorry, I keep saying sister. Bro, sorry, your 2 brothers. what was kind of your relationship with them? What's their personalities like at this time?
Yeah, so Joe was always like outgoing. It's funny. We're all kind of different. Like, so I was very whitewashed. Joe's all his friends were Korean,
Oh, yo.
so he was like the Korean version, and my brother Martin, all his friends were Hispanic, so he was like the Mexican version, right, of all of us. And it was funny because me growing up, like we grew up in kind of like a Hispanic neighborhood as well. Like my name was Chino, so Chino is kind of like affectionate, like it's Chinese. I guess it's Chinese, right? But all Mexican people called me Chino. When I played football, I had Chino in my jersey, so it's so funny. Like to this day, my friends will call me Chino. You know what I mean? And my younger brother was also called Chino, Martin. And so we were all totally different. Like me was like the rule follower, Joe was like the rule breaker, and Martin was just kind of like, yeah, like just go with the flow. Like he's like the nicest person. He's like rule follower.
Sure.
Excuse me. So like we all had different personalities. We all had different friends. So that's what's interesting about all of us when it comes to our personalities.
And how did they kind of accept your relationship now with your current spouse? I don't know if that is this around the right time. I'm right here.
Oh yeah. So I get into mortgages around 2011, and then they're having me like cold call. Like I have no idea what sales is. I came from the teaching profession. I'm getting hung up left and right. I'm cold calling realtors to try to get business. I have no idea what I'm saying. Like, I'm just saying like, hey, yeah, like we close on time or whatever. Like, no idea what any of that means. And I'm like, this sucks. I'm just getting rejected left and right. Like, I get no business. Like, can I do something more like on the paperwork side? Because I'm good with paperwork.
Right.
So I became a processor. In mortgages, a processor handles a lot of the paperwork, and he or she's the liaison with the underwriter who makes the final decision. And so you have your loan officer who gets the business. Your processor helps collect the documents and works with the underwriting to approve the loan, right? And so I became a processor, and I was a very good processor, became a processing manager and a junior underwriter as well. And then during this time as a processing manager was when I met my wife. So I was in charge of hiring processors for different branches. And the West Covina branch was looking for a processor. And so Min, who I talked about earlier, who was my major influence in terms of social media that I have now. But, Min is not only one of my really good friends, he was like the regional manager. He had teams underneath him with all these different loan officers, and all these guys were super successful. And he's like, you know what, James, like I want you to be my processing manager. I want you to manage the processors. I want you to hire a processor for whatever branch that needs a processor. And so corporate brings in and says, hey, you should interview this processor. Her name is Sunny. She's one of the best interviews what we've seen. We interviewed her for like a different position, but she would rather be a processor. So I bring her into the office. I meet with her, ask her like all the hard-hitting questions. She passes flying color. I'm like, yeah, like we'll hire you. Like West Covina is looking for one. And then at the time she was dating somebody. I was still kind of DJing.
Sure.
So I was like meeting girls and having fun. And my wife, she's Korean. Her name's Sunny. This is her, and she's like very pretty. Like all the guys were kind of like, "Oh, who's that? Who's that processor?" And I'm always very professional, so like I never thought. But like months go by, and everyone's like, "Hey," she had broken up with her boyfriend, and like, maybe there's something with you guys. You know what I mean? And then so one of the branch managers, Kevin Kittikar, we're still good friends. We're big Laker fans, so we're always talking about Lakers. And he's a branch manager. I'm a branch manager now, so we talk about a lot of stuff about when it comes to our teams and this and that. But long story short, back then when I was a processing manager, he was just like, hey, I got an idea, bro. I got a good idea. Let's me and Sonny go out for some drinks. we'll go to her like favorite Korean spot, like where we have like Korean barbecue. Whatever, you know what I mean? And this is what I'll do. Like, so he has like a 2-year-old or whatever at the time. He's just like, I'll pretend that like my son is sick and I got to go home, but I'll leave you two there by yourself. I'm like, all right, like that's a good idea. Let's do that.
Does he know this?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was a setup. It was a setup. And
That's awesome.
And so we go out, and then she just sees me like sitting at the booth by myself. She's like, "Where's Kevin?" I'm like, "Dude, sorry. Like Kevin had to bounce because his son wasn't feeling too good. Guess it's just you and me." So that night we're like having like soju shots, we're drinking, and we're having a good time. And then we get into an Uber. Uber was still, I think, yeah, it's still back then. Like 2000 around.
Yeah. This is around time.
Yeah, like so this is like 2015-ish. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, 2015. And then we're sitting in the car, and you know, as a guy, there's there's telltales.
Sure.
Like, you know, if a girl likes you, like, you know, she breaks the touch barrier, touches your arm a couple times, you know, like,
sure,
she's interested. Well, like I misread this. I'm at this time, I'm thinking I'm pretty good, like, with chicks now. Like, I kind of know the telltales. She gets tired in the backseat Uber. She puts her, like, head on my shoulder, and she, like, looks up. I'm like, bro, if I don't go in for it, excuse me, if I don't go in for a kiss,
this is the time.
Yeah, this is the time. It's like
this is the moment.
Yeah,
this is the moment we've all been waiting for. Yeah,
right. So I go in for a kiss. She backs out. She's like, "Oh, whoa." Like, whoa, what are you doing? Kind of thing. Dude, like, the Uber stops right there. Like, we just dropped her off at her apartment. Like, she's like, okay, I'll see you at work later. And the Uber guy looks at me through the rear window. He's like, nice. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, I just crashed and burned. And then, like, the next day, I'm, like, doing damage control. Like, I'm, like, texting her, like, hey, Sonny. I'm like, sorry. Like, you know, I hope that we can have a good work relationship. I totally misread that. And she, like, gave the, you know how girls or guys, like, you have, like, that line that you say, oh, I'm just focused on work. You know, I'm not looking for a relationship. You're such a nice guy. And I'm totally glad that you're my manager. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it totally gave me the brush off. And, you know, and everything is, like, fine. I'm like,
sure.
Oh, thank God. Like, damage control. Like, I'm good. And then it wasn't until, like, so I had an assignment, like, so one of the branches, their processor, she had to go on maternity leave, so they needed a processor. So I went there for like 3 months to help train their staff to handle all the processing. And I hadn't seen Sunny for like 3 months. We would talk here and there on the phone. She'd have scenario questions. And I get back to our office in Irvine where everybody was at. And then, like, it clicked. And then that's what, like, for her, it was more like an emotional thing. It wasn't like a physical. It was like emotionally she wasn't ready. Emotionally she wasn't attracted.
Sure.
But then when I came back, like, one of the girls, Gabby, she was another processor. She goes, James, I think Sonny likes you. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, oh, yeah, we were having lunch. And she was just like, oh, look at James. Like, he's looking good. And then, you know, and then I was like, okay. And then that's when I asked her out. Like, it was like a Memorial weekend. She wasn't doing anything. I asked her out to dinner. And then,
sometimes it happens that way, right? You kind of need to wait for the season. Sometimes it's not the right time to harvest.
Right. I like that one.
You planted the seed.
Yeah.
You just needed it to.
Yeah.
You just needed it to. Just keep watering it.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, time will come. That's really cool.
Yeah.
And I take it she got along with your friends and family, and it was just kind of like it just felt like she was a part of the team.
Right. Yeah, she and like, for me, I knew because, like, I never met a person that loved me that much. You know what's crazy?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Because you meet other girls that, like, oh, this is my girlfriend, but like I never met somebody that was a fighter like her. Like, we would get an argument, and then she'd be the first one to be like, no, I'm not giving up. Because, like, I'm kind of like a quitter in relationship. I was like the proverbial single guy for such a long time.
Sure, yeah.
Like, I would show up to, like, family gatherings or friends gatherings, like their kids' birthday parties. Like, oh, there's James, a party animal. Like, he's single. You know what I mean? Like, forever the single bachelor. And I felt like when you just know, right? Obviously, when you know, you just know. I had never met somebody that just like wholeheartedly was a fighter for a relationship, would never let me give up. And she's so big on family. So that was what I was missing. I was never like, I never felt like close to my family.
Sure.
I always felt very distant a lot of times. Like, you know, we talk about the language barrier, that type of thing. But for her, she taught me a lot about the importance of family. So now I'm like a huge family guy. But before I was like, my friends were my family.
I don't know if you can touch on this, but what is kind of the dynamic of her family and how that kind of you assimilate to kind of her friend group and her relationship with her kind of side of the world.
And Sarah can attest to this. Like Korean people are like the tops of the Asian chain. You know what I'm saying? Like Korean people will let you know that they're Korean. You know what I'm saying? They're so proud of that. Like that. And bro, BTS now is like, you know what I mean? Like if you're gonna be an Asian right now, being Korean is like the tops of the tops. So at first I was kind of intimidated because it's like, man, like, you know, I grew up in Sunny Hills. The Koreans were the top. Like, you know, I'm Vietnamese. Like, we think we're dope because, like, you know, we got the pho, we got the banh mi. Like, Korean food to me is elite. I mean, Vietnamese food is elite.
Yo,
you know,
pho though is like,
it's elite.
Oh, it's too good.
Yeah. If you don't like pho, I don't know what's up with you. You know what I mean? Like, it's elite.
I'm writing
elite status, right? And then so I was like worried at first, you know, but like, you know, I met her mom. Like, dude, her mom is like my mom, salt of the earth, the most wonderful Korean lady. So she's a chef for like a restaurant. Like, so she's very known within the Korean community as one of like the best cooks. Like, she's never made a bad dish, and I love cooking. I'm like a big cook person, so I cook a lot. So like my first meal for Sunny's mom, dude, I busted out like aged ribeye with like twice baked potato with like asparagus, like, you know, did the French style where you ladle the butter with the thyme.
Okay, bro, I see you.
Yeah, you know me. So like I impressed her mom with my cooking right off the bat because she's a chef. But and her dad is just a super sweet guy, and so like they just like were just the nicest people, and her sister and my brother-in-law, Steven and Jenny, like we all just got along. And I never felt like different in terms of like, you know, you ain't as cool as us Koreans. You know what I mean? Never felt that way whatsoever. And when my parents met her mom, like, it was just like, you knew that like this was a match. Because I was worried, like, you know, would they get along? They don't speak each other's language.
Yeah. I'm so Can you dive into that real quick? This is a personal. Everybody, sorry, this is a moment for me.
Yeah.
What was that? I don't know if you remember that instance of them two meeting. Can you dive into like that? Yeah, I would love to explore that.
Yeah. So we took her mom and my parents out to like a restaurant, like an Asian restaurant, and you know, like my parents had brought her a gift, her mom a gift, her mom brought my parents a gift, and it was just like so. Her mom just speaks Korean, so Sunny was translating to my parents. But you can just tell, like, you know, by their smiles and the way that they respect each other, looked at each other, and it's like when souls connect. You know, it's like it's not always language. It's like your communication, you know, nonverbal and how you are, and so yeah, from that day one, they were able to, even though we weren't. Like, it was like sitting there over wine, everyone's talking about their life story. It wasn't like that at all. It was just kind of like that like, hey, your daughter, your son they're perfect for each other. We know that. Like, you know, this is just kind of more of like a formality of like seeing where you came from. And then we left it as like, I could see why you're such a terrific person, vice versa. Why I believe Sunny's such a great person because of her mom and her sister.
That's awesome.
And why she felt like I was like, you know, a genuine person because of my parents.
How from this kind of point on, how long till you got married, or did you have a kid before then?
Dude, like, it became like instant.
Oh, wow.
Right? Like so we like from our first date, me and Sonny, like the first months, we already had said like I love you like right away. And then we were already talking about kids. And then my son Jacob, he's now 6. She was pregnant with Jacob before we got married or anything like that.
Right.
Right. So when I told my parents, they kind of like knew. You know what I mean? Your
Sure.
parents have a sense. There's like, hey, I gotta tell you something, mom and dad, about Sunny. It's like, she's pregnant, and they're like, okay, cool. You know what I mean? And so everything moved really, really fast with us, and we had Jacob first before we got married, and yeah, it just happened like that.
How do you feel at this time? How's life right? Like, if you got a scale of 1 to 10, like, where's life at right now?
Yeah, so a little bit about Sonny too. Like, so Sonny had, like, I have another son. He's 14, 15 now, Caden. So she was married prior, divorced, and then, you know, at first, like, it was like, you know, hey, is this the right thing? You know,
Sure,
like,
yeah.
you know, I'm going to inherit another son. But, like, I met Caden when he was 7 and 8. But he's the sweetest kid. You know what I mean? He's a gamer.
Oh, yo.
So now you get to see how kids are. Like nowadays, it's like, man, he's a gamer, but this kid is like super smart. Like he's the type. He goes to Sunny Hills too, which is crazy. Where I went to school, he went to my elementary school, so it's such a small world.
Yo.
Yeah, he went to my elementary school. He went to junior high, same junior high parks as me, Sunny Hills. But he's such a smart kid. Like kids nowadays, like he just YouTube stuff. Bro, it's like, how'd you get an A in that class? Like, how'd you learn the Pythagorean theorem? Yada yada yada. He's like, oh, I just YouTubed it, and I get A's, like better than I ever did. You know what I mean? And so like for me, it was just kind of like everything happened so naturally with us as a family and being a dad. But like, you know, when Sunny was like pregnant with Jacob. You know, it was hard because we were living in Tustin at the time.
Yo.
I was just learning to be a loan officer. And if you know Tustin, Irvine, it's like the rich area of the Asians. And like we felt like we were like fake it till you make it.
Sure.
Like we barely had like money in our account, I felt like. And we're like, okay, if our account hits like this amount, like let's go talk to your mom and dad and live with them. It got to that point. Like we were like worried, and I had to sell my DJ set. So this is like my son is born, like the Korean culture. He was gonna have like his 100-day. Sarah, you know what's up? The 100-day, right? when they turned that, it's a big birthday.
It's huge.
Right. And like I was just like, dude, like I gotta make sure that I have the best party for my kid, because like this is something you don't get to do again.
Sure.
I remember selling my CDJs for a couple $1,000s, everything, like my speakers, my mixer, everything, so that I could give my kid like the best birthday possible. But it's weird because you look back at life and like even though you were struggling, like you never felt like you were struggling, you know, and it was my wife that convinced me to be a loan officer because I was a processing manager.
Yeah.
And then I was helping a company set up, and like I was working through a salary negotiation, and I wanted this pay, and they're like, oh, that's a lot you're asking for, but I helped build the whole infrastructure. And she's like, you have your loan officer license. Why didn't you be a loan officer? Why didn't you learn sales? I was like, but I don't know how to sell. You know what I mean? So I would be watching like YouTube videos. I would watch like Grant Cardone. I would pick up any podcast I could. Us living in Tustin, faking it till you make it. Like I was just like anything I could read about when it comes to sales.
Right.
Anybody in sales right now, the number one thing you need to read or listen to podcasts, Zig Ziglar. I guarantee you. Zig Ziglar is the ultimate sales professional. I think he's originally from Texas. He died, but like he like had these audiobooks where he would go to conferences and he would teach people how to sell and ask questions and things like that. And man, changing my life. Like you can listen to any audiobook when it comes to success. If you don't listen to Zig Ziglar and sell, like I don't know, maybe you're not top tier. No,
Sure. Yeah. Hey, listen. You gotta join. You gotta join my team.
Right.
Okay. If you want to live in my city, you kind of have to perform.
Right.
I think I think this is a. One thing I feel like is that during this time, it feels like you're busy. Like,
Yeah.
like there's a goal and there's always something new coming around the corner, and it's kind of like a chapter change, right? Because like that 100 days wasn't just 100 days for your son. It was like kind of like a phase 3 for you. Like you sold your DJ set, like you sold this, like you said, hey, look, I'm moving on from this life that like you that you know, from the frat guy to you know, right, you know, the football player to like, okay, now I need to be kind of like a family man. And I think that's I mean that's I wonder how that feels. Like is it like I kind of was asking, you know, life at this time, does it feel like, you know, hey man, it's a 10 out of 10, or does it feel like, you know, after we're just are you content with this? Was it like, was the boys like, yo, what are you doing? Like, you know, was it, you know, how do you feel like it was during this moment?
It was hard because it's kind of like, imagine having a conversation with your wife, like you're looking at bills and you're like, what can we cut? Like we can't make this payment. Like, can we get rid of this Netflix account, whatever, you know what I mean? And it was like, you know, getting a kosher salary to like, dang, like you have nothing. And when I started off, you know, it's called loan originator, being a loan officer, having a cold call, building your own book of business, you're getting rejected every single day.
Huge.
Like you're making like 80, 100 phone calls. And, you know, a lot of so for me, it's called self-generate. So it's not like working for like a Bank of America or Wells where you get like this salary and you sit at a desk and people walk into your branch because they know the name.
Huge.
You know, I worked for a company, it's like a direct lender. So there's like hundreds of thousands of direct lenders. And actually realtors rather work with a direct lender because you have your own team. Everything's done in-house and you close faster than a big bank.
Yeah.
With a big bank, it takes a long time to close and they work 9 to 5 and people just walk into that branch because they know the name. Being a direct lender, you have to get your own business because they don't know your name.
Right.
They don't know your company. At the time, you know, for example, I was at OGI at one point, you know, people would go like, what's OGI? I'm like, Original Gangsters of Irvine. You know, it was like, no one knew what OGI meant. Like it's Oniglo. It's a bank. It's a direct lender.
Yeah.
So here you're having a cold call and getting rejected and you have to build a book of business because realtors, you know, when you look for a house, the consumer goes to the realtor like, oh, hey, you're a realtor. Help me find a house.
Yeah.
Well, before I help you find a house, you got to talk to a loan officer to see what you're pre-approved at.
Yeah.
And so at the time, we had our kind of like a goal. And so my first 3 to 6 months, just cold call, getting rejected, meeting people, hoping business comes in, and like not seeing my first deal close till after like 90 days. So it takes like 90 days to see your first deal, and you're seeing your savings deplenish. And it was hard because we felt like, what are we doing here in a rich city when we don't feel rich ourselves? So, you know, my first year being a loan officer, I was like the top of my branch. I actually did the best out of every loan officer. I was the number one producer at my branch. Second year, same thing, because like I just have that drive. I don't know if it's like I'm not like a astronomical sign person, but like I guess Capricorns, we're very like motivated and we want to be the tops and we want to be best. I've always had that personality, like just give me like the manual or let me learn something and I can be the best at it.
Sure.
And I knew I'd be a really good loan officer if I just kind of like, you know.
We just got the tools to be able to, get the skill to get it using.
So then we're like, so I'm top producing at my branch every single year, pretty much, I felt like. And then we moved out of Tustin and we rented a condo in Buena Park. But like to go from Tustin to Buena Park, it felt like a downsizing of life. You know what I mean? So that was kind of defeating, but we were doing it for a reason. We wanted to save up money so that we could buy our house. Yeah, and it was the best thing we ever did. Like, so it felt like we were eating top ramen while everybody was like living a lavish lifestyle, but we were just stacking chips. And it was the best thing ever because now I can give people financial advice because we stacked chips and we did a great job and we bought our house and we put like a huge down payment.
You're ready to go.
Right. So we bought our house in Fullerton. So now I'm back in Fullerton. You know, I lived in Irvine for a while, moved back to Fullerton, and it was the smartest thing because I could give people solid financial advice because I've been successful. We have a great savings. We put a huge down payment. So we didn't skip the steps because nowadays people always look to hack everything. They want to skip steps. They don't want to climb that mountain. They want to see if there's an elevator or a helicopter that can take them to the top of the mountain. They don't realize that you got to fall. Life is a constant journey of falling, succeeding, starting over, and you have to humble yourself. So, because when I got into the mortgage profession, it was humbling to get rejected the first time and saying, "Hey, I need to be a processor because I can't sell." And then when I was a loan officer, I went with my buddy Daniel David, who we DJ'd together. We happened to be we're DJ duo Kick Rocks together. I was like, Daniel, dude, I'm gonna humble myself, bro. Like, you know, you're a branch manager. Teach me how to be an LO. Like, I don't care. Like, I just want to like a small percentage if I help these other loan officers close a file. You know what I mean? And so you have to really humble yourself. I think that's the biggest thing that I learned in life.
This grind to the top, right, to where you are now. You said your son's now 6?
Yep. 6.
6 years of like going from there to this point in time. Like, right. Did you expect to see yourself like when you're at that when he was born to now? Like, man, dude, this is the goal. Like, was there a doubt in your mind, or was there like, nah, look, we're gonna make this happen?
You're right. You have to. You can't have doubt. You know, you have to really believe in yourself and your capabilities, that you're built more to life than what you think you're capable of. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think every person has, they call it the God particle or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Everybody has that ability for greatness. You have to tap into it and have that abundance mindset. So, you know, me listening to all these podcasts and things like that, I was feeding my brain to have that abundance and gratitude. Waking up every morning, having affirmations. Yeah. And simple things like thankful, you know, thank you, Jesus, for waking up today, being able to walk. Thank you, Jesus, for having a roof over my head and food. You know, so I turned that abundance into something of gratitude, and to know that, like, hey, man, like, if my goal is to make $1 million, I make $1 million. You have to have that. And a lot of times it's hard because it's also upbringing, right?
Right.
If like, I had to break away from that too, because also, like, think about, like, my parents were very humble. So they're like very religious Catholics. They're very much like, hey, it's not about this, it's about holier life.
Sure.
And money is the root of all evil. So imagine breaking away from that mindset of like money is evil to going, money can do a lot in terms of taking care of your family and helping others. And without money, then like my kids could struggle. You know, my kid goes to Montessori right now, bro. Like, dude, he's like swim. He has like swim classes. He could take golf and tennis if he wanted there.
It's insane. I don't think a lot of people don't know what that means, but like this kid's living
the dream, man.
Yeah.
He's 6 years old. You know what I mean? Like, but it's because like
the grind,
you learned, the grind.
And how old? I'm sorry. How old was that when he was? Do you remember how old you were? 6 years. I don't know how old you are now. So
43.
43.
Yeah.
A lot of people are like, "Oh man, it's too late."
Yeah,
it's too late. I can't start, man. I should have done it in my 20s.
You nailed it.
Should have done it in my 30s. Like, but you just that's what then until that grind or
no, I was like in my 30s, like my mid 30s when I started.
And just started going after it. It's never too late in a way.
Yeah, because it's like, think about all the stories, right? Like, what was it, like Colonel Sanders?
Yeah,
was like 60 something, whatever, when he discovered
the recipe for his chicken. Yeah,
right. It's just that mindset. Like you don't compare your chapter 1 to someone's chapter 30. Yeah, that's my biggest advice to people, because sometimes we compare like I still compare myself to Min, for example. Min, who I mentioned, like he runs What's a Mortgage. And when I saw him run that social media account like 5 years ago, or more than that, 7 years ago, and he was one of the first loan officers to be on social media and on Facebook and Instagram. And I remember him going like, hey, James, here's a referral. She's looking to buy in Texas. And she's like, I'll do everything the Wham family wants me to do. I'm like, Wham? What's a mortgage?
Wham.
Yeah. Like, dude, like.
She's already speaking the lingo.
Right. She's like, oh, I watched Min's videos on credit. I watched Min's video on, savings, this and that.
Yeah.
And whatever you guys tell me. And so when that happened like 3 or so years ago, and I was like, dude, there's something to social media. Like I knew that one day I wanted to do social media, Instagram, and now I do TikToks.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like you have to have that mindset of like always progressing. And the crazy thing is as you get older, you get smarter.
Yeah.
Like I'm a way smarter version than I am when I was in my 20s, when I felt I knew everything in life. And you look back like, dude, I didn't know anything. As you get older, your brain just gets like, I just feel like you just get better and better. And for me, it's always about how can you gamify the system. So what I mean by that, so like when you're a teacher, I figured how to gamify being the best teacher ever. So I'll be like, okay, kids, you have 5 minutes to get out your social studies book, your notepad, and this assignment. And I would put up a laptop and I would put up the clock, and it would be on the projector. It would be a clock that counts. And I'd say, in 5 minutes, the first team to be ready will get $100 dino dollars. And the kids are like, $100 dino dollars. You know what I mean? And all I did was I went online one time and I found like you could print out dino dollars, and I would use that as my money system to teach and reward kids for the teacher store at the end of the month, so that they had something to work for.
Yeah.
They were in groups, so it taught them teamwork. And I studied so much about being a great teacher, like all the kids were in little tables and pods, and I would just walk around in one continuous loop, and so I see every kid and what they're doing. So they never would act up because you gamified the system. You knew how to manage your kids to where they were like machines. And when we went out, like getting rejected, like, when you get older, you meet girls, you get rejected. And you're like, you have to, yeah, like, dude, I'm Asian, I'm short. I'm going against like good looking white guys like Grady, picking up chicks. So how do you gamify the system? Well, you become uber successful and you get bottle service. Cause like, then all the girls come to the table. You know what I'm saying? And then so you kind of figure it out. So with what's crazy thing about Min is I learned so much about like how you flip the script in life.
Yeah.
And so for me, owning a home in Fullerton, I now live in the hills. So when I grew up in Fullerton, I always dreamed about living in the hills. My wife and I literally would drive to the neighborhood, and we would drop off Caden. I remember a couple years ago, we dropped off Caden to his junior high. We sat there in our car. We looked at these $1 million homes, and we're like, one day we're going to live here. We said, one day we're going to live here. Like, not only did we live there, but we, like, rejected some of those homes. We're like, no, that home's not even good enough. Like, we want this house. And now my house, like, I'm overlooking the city. I see Orange County from my house. Like, I see the Disneyland fireworks. I can see all the way to Irvine.
Wow.
Like, every day I can look to Irvine and go, I was there faking the funk. But now I'm here because, you learn how to be the best loan officer better. You learn how. So now I do TikToks. I started last December, like 0 followers. And I was motivated by Min because, like a story of 3 years ago, like social media works.
Yeah.
Everybody's attention now is on TikTok. And then I started an account where I do mortgage hacks and tips. And I think I'm funny, so I do a lot of like funny stuff. Like things that are relatable, like, oh, your client just quit their job, or they just got a new car. and you do it, you lip sync it to something. And then I do a lot of hacks, like, how to do this, how to do, like, how to buy multiple properties and how to do this, like that. And then I remember starting and having like only my cousin Kim, shout out to my cousin Kim. She was like the only one that followed me. And like I had like 5 followers, and then now I have 16,000, and it's growing, and it's really cool to see that you now created a community. Like 16,000 people follow you. That like it's like having a store and 16,000 people going to your store.
Mr. Man.
Right, and like my goal is to keep growing that account, and then you know what I mean, and that's like my example of game, like always thinking about what is the future and how can you place yourself in the future. And I closed 4 deals from TikTok last month. You know what I mean?
You're 2/5 of the way into life, I like to say.
Right.
You're not even halfway through, and you're like, look at just where you're at. It's like what? You literally were on the boat, like you are.
Right.
It's just
the jungle people. That's what people saw us as.
And just you're now on the top of the hill. You're seeing the world. You're like, and you come from this humble beginning. And you still hold on to it. Like it's not like you're sitting here boasting. Like you're still holding on to this. Like one of the things I find interesting. This is just me. Just a small, very very small glimpse of interactions I've had with you. You don't make anyone feel less than, and it's so interesting. Like you don't feel like being called those names. You want to get back a little bit, you know what I'm saying. All the people who used to get the girls, and you couldn't. Like you never feel like you want to retaliate. There's no retaliation. Now that where you are now, and just real quick before we ask the question, can you tell me the name of your business that you have built, and can you give me a little bit of where can people find you on TikTok?
Yeah. My name is, my TikTok handle is James the Lender, James the Lender, and I still work for a type of company. It's called a direct lender, like hundreds of thousands of direct lenders.
Sure, yeah,
but now I'm a branch manager, and so I have my own team, and so I do these TikToks to not only teach people. See, I get to be a teacher.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's like I teach people all the time, and I learned that I was a really good teacher. I simplify the mortgage process. I tell people hey, this is the steps you need to take. This is how you get pre-approved, and I make the process simple for everybody. And then I just realize and the funny thing with TikTok is I just stumbled on it. Min was the seed that was planted. I want to be that one day. And then and then Instagram was trying to compete with TikTok a year ago, 2 years ago. And they do Reels. And then I was like, oh, let me just play around with the Reels. So I did a video of my son. I was explaining to you earlier with that video of that Bruno Mars, talking to the moon song. Mm-hmm. And then it became viral with kids closing their eyes, these little kids. And when they open their eyes are like beautiful blue or green. And that's the whole, talking to the moon part. And I did it with my son. He has big, beautiful eyes, but he had these funny, he had these glow in the dark neon.
Yo.
So I had the lights off kind of, you could still see his face. And then when it hits the hook part of it, the talking to the moon, he clicks on the glasses and it glows.
It glows.
And it got 40,000 views. And I was like, wait a minute. I only have 800 friends. You know what I mean? How are these views? So you realize that Instagram was pushing, the algorithm was pushing out video content because they're trying to keep people on Instagram and not on TikTok. It's a competition. And then that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to start doing Reels and do videos. And then I was like, okay, let's go to TikTok. And TikTok account is doing a lot more than Instagram, because I feel like Instagram is a lot like your friends and your family.
Sure, yeah.
You know what I mean? And people are kind of looking to see what Sarah's up to on the weekend, or oh, look at that wedding, and oh, look at the cute dogs. But TikTok's just endless entertainment. The algorithm reads you so well. They know what you're into. You into sports, you see nothing but sports. You into cooking, you see nothing but cooking. You into finances, it shows you all these finance videos. And the craziest part where I kind of felt like I knew I made it was like, if you like, so TikTok right now, the word is SEO,
Yeah.
and so it's kind of like pretty much, it's like the new Google. It's how you Google. So if you ask millennials and people that search, they don't Google stuff anymore. They just find it on social media.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they go on YouTube and they go on TikTok. And if you type in the search word mortgage, which is like anything can pop up mortgage, I always like, man, one day I wish I would see myself. Google mortgage, I'm like one of the top 10 videos that shows up. I have like 800,000 views on one. Another one I did have like 1 million views on. And it's just crazy to me that like I looked at this as like, okay, I'm just going to give it 90 days. Only my cousin follows me. I'm obviously not that funny or educational. And then now it's like doing really well. So,
my final question, before we move on to the final bit here, what's the dream? Like where have you kind of gotten to where you are now, seeing the journey that that your family had to build out. I didn't get to really ask this about you traveling, going back to Vietnam and getting to be able to experience that or show your family that, but what's the dream? What are you fighting for? What do you want out of life now? What's the goal? Like what's your vision for kind of the future for yourself?
Yeah, I think everybody wants to sail in the sunset. Kind of like that story I told you about the teacher that had to leave in that way. Like you want one day to sail the sunset, and you look at your life and you feel like you did good for your kids. And my dream is really just building something to leave for my kids, and having a successful career to where you can retire. I want to be able to retire just like my parents in our own way and be successful and look back at my career and say I helped out all these families doing it, and having my sons look at my career going like, hey, I want to be like dad. I want to be in finances. I want to do something. But whatever they want, obviously, is cool. But you just want to leave the world in a better place and be a good person to where people go. Like you said, I mean, that's like the best compliment. Not like how successful, it's like how humbling, what a humble person you seem like, or
Dude, yeah.
how you make me feel as a person.
Yeah.
Because, I feel like everybody's chapter is different. Like you never know who you're talking to. Like you could be talking to a person right now that could be like not doing well, but later on they become Elon Musk, because everybody has that potential to be great. You just have to tap into it, and that you never know when it hits in your life that you have the opportunity. Right.
Mr. James Dinh.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
We have a random questions we have you, and then this is it. This is kind of the phase we ask some deep questions. So just to kind of put some sprinkles on top, just to make it a little bit interesting. But awesome. So if you're ready to jump into it, we'll see what you got, sir.
Sure. Fire.
Okay. How excuse me. How would you rate your life, and what could you do to improve it?
That's a good question, Gio. Thank you. How would you rate your life? Like a scale, like 1 to 10?
Yeah. I've tried to get you earlier, but
yeah. I don't know. I think it's like a 7, right? Because in life, I think if you want to be successful, you always have goals and you always want it. Like you're never really satisfied, and that's what drives me. And I could be a better dad, right? I could be a better Catholic, for example. I could be a better son to my parents. I could be more present with my parents because they're getting the later years of their life. And you could always do better in business and be the most successful, whatever it is. You know what I mean? And be a better husband. Like I'm an average husband. I'm not that great. I'm like the nicest guy, but like I'm brutally honest with my wife. But that's the reason why I think I love her so much, because I'm able to be myself. With other people, like you hide the version of you. But with her, if I don't like something, I'll say straight up. And like it's liberating, because in life I used to always be the people pleaser. I was always a people pleaser. I always followed the rules. And now as you get older, you're like, wait a minute, like this is my this is like a different side of me. This is my villain stage, as they call it. You know what I mean? I'm not a villain whatsoever, but
Sure.
like I get to be like more of who I truly feel I am. So we're always evolving, and I'm still muted. I haven't cussed one time in this, but obviously, I try to be professional as anybody. But
Right.
we also hold back of who we truly are, I guess. So
That's a great answer.
thanks.
What's the best life lesson you've ever learned?
What's the best life lesson? This goes back to one of the best books I ever read was The Millionaire Next Door. And the Millionaire Next Door
Sarah's gonna write that down for me.
is a book about, it's not about your offense, it's about your defense. Okay? And what that means is, like, let's say you're a lawyer and your profession requires you to wear like Armani suits, or you know what I mean, like drive a European car, and your neighborhood is other doctors and lawyers. So yeah, you might make 200, 300,000, whatever a year,
Right.
in your profession or more, right? 500, whatever it is, but your defense sucks because you're spending on luxury cars.
Right.
And in this book, they did a survey, not a survey, but like they did a test case where they invited these multimillionaires to like a dinner party. And they asked, and they're like, oh, well, we better stock it up with Don P and like, the caviar and the fanciest things. And these millionaires would slowly come in where they ask them questions, and they all wear like jeans and a t-shirt. And like they're like Wrangler jeans, you know what I mean? Like they're not like like expensive jeans.
Yeah.
And
True religions.
yeah, true. Yeah. They're like, what do you want to drink? And they had all these champagnes ready. You're like, what's your cheapest beer? They're like, Bud Light. Like, I want a Bud Light. It's free, right? Yeah. And when I read this book, when my wife and I moved to Buena Park, that was a lesson we taught each other. We're like, we don't need to keep up with the Joneses. Like I wear like old shoes. I wear the same jeans that I've worn for like the last 3 years. This jacket, this thing is from Target.
Hey, shout out to Target.
Right. The sweater's banana.
Target, you know?
Yeah. The sweater's banana, but my wife forced me to buy a banana, like forced me to buy it. And she's like, you need to buy something for yourself. Like you know what I'm saying?
Right.
All my videos, I wear like Nike t-shirts in my TikTok videos. And they're all like for the Nike outlet. You know what I mean? Like I make a sandwich every day. I don't go out whatsoever. Like I stopped going to Starbucks, like stuff like that. You know what I mean? So your defense, like, and if you don't have a partner that plays defense, my wife's defense is like the Ravens defense, the Super Bowl Ravens defense, man. Her defense is top tier defense. You know what I'm saying? But like if you and your wife are both spenders, like you'll never get ahead. Because most of these millionaires, you know what they did in the book? They owned like a car wash, or they owned like a laundry place. They were like self-employed. And a little bit of college. So the millionaire next door is not who you think the millionaire next door is.
Yeah.
Is that you could make a decent living, but if you save so good, that's how you build wealth. So that's my biggest life lesson that I learned, that I could teach people, that I hope that in this podcast, if someone's listening, like you gotta read that book, The Millionaire Next Door, because like it truly taught me how to be successful.
Jeez, man. Okay, I don't even know if we can get the rest of these. So, what do you think life is about? I'm laying them on you, man.
This is the Life Podcast.
Yeah.
I think life is just about us all discovering what makes us happy and coexistent with our neighbor. You know, because life's not fair. You know, I'm gonna get dark on you. Like, no one cares about, like, we all, like, our favorite channel is Me FM. That's our favorite radio station.
Me.
Right. Right. You know what I mean? Like, we all, like, people die every single day, and we just kind of move on. We're just like, you know, when my brother died, what was crazy is, like, people are like, man, you're handling this pretty well. And, like, because I know this, like, I could post it on, like, Facebook. Got a new puppy. How cute. Right? And life is so harsh and life is so crazy that we just don't know what the end game really is. You know what I mean? Like, what's the end game? And so to me, I'm like, whatever you do, you, and you're happy and you just, like, are a decent person and you don't screw it up for the rest of your neighbor. You know what I mean? And you raise a kid that's your kids that are just productive citizens. You know what I mean? And we just kind of, like, it's like the telephone game, you know, like you whisper something to one person and the next person you just hope has the same message. Right. But it's always like a different message at the end.
Yeah.
It's like you said, I went to the grocery store and I bought banana and eggs. And the last person goes, I went to the mall and I bought this and that. You know, it's like a totally different message. And what I mean is just like you just hope that your life, the domino that you drop is a positive ripple. You know, the pebble, the great Bruce Lee said, you know, the pebble that you drop in that pond has a rippling effect through everything. And you just hope that the ripples that you do are positive and not negative. Because life sucks, man. Like so many people sugarcoat life, and like it's like you and I can have a great conversation, but somewhere someone's struggling. They lost somebody.
Huge.
You know, it's just not fair. As you get older, you realize like life is just not fair. Yeah.
Do the best you can.
Yeah.
What's one lesson that would really, let's say, help your son?
You got to teach your kids about money. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not money driven whatsoever. You know what I'm saying? Like, but you have to teach your kid. See, because what happens now is that like kids have so much access to information that we never did. Like when I was kids, like Encyclopedia Britannica. I don't know if you or your audience know, but like when you're a kid, it's just like the internet. When I was a 90s kid, internet was just invented. Like it wasn't like we could Google stuff. You know, like rich families would have Encyclopedia Britannica in their house.
Yeah.
And now everybody has access to information, and you can learn and be self-taught. But there's a reason why, in my opinion, that like people aren't taught finances, because the elites, you know, I'm not a conspiracy theory or
no, sure, yeah,
I'm not into conspiracy like that, but
you were a teacher in a school,
yeah. But the cream of the crop, there's a reason why not everybody can be a millionaire. There's a reason why. You know what I'm saying? So you have to teach your kids the importance of finances, the importance of savings, investing, how money can change your life. Because if you don't teach your kid this, we're seeing a nation now that investors out there are turning to everybody into eternal renters. So meaning there's institutional investors are now buying homes at like the 300, 400,000 or less range. And they're keeping these homes just to rent it out to the public. So if you don't think about that and think that like our kids may never own their own homes because that target keeps moving, then now us as parents now have to think about buying the home for their kids. That's what it is. So you got to get ahead of the curve and go like, hey, this is what it's like. People are going to turn to renters the rest of their life. So if you don't teach your kids about money, wealth, then now how can you retire and how can you help your kids? Because you can't.
Yeah.
That's what's sad about it.
Well, I think that's I mean, a good lesson for your son, right? Make sure you manage your money, and you gotta kind of prepare for that. Prepare for that. Kind of rich dad, poor dad type of mentality.
Yeah, exactly. Rich Dad Poor Dad, another great book.
Final question.
All right, thanks.
What's a memory you keep holding on to, and why?
Dang, a memory I keep holding on to, and why? It's just more like I said earlier, like regrets. I think before we started the pod, like I regret that I didn't learn Vietnamese. That my parents weren't like, no, you have to learn Vietnamese. They wanted us. They were so proud to be Americans. That they were so proud of us, like learning English because of this great country. That I wish they said, hey, every Saturday you got to go to Vietnamese school. Because to this day, like I'm embarrassed as an adult to talk to another Vietnamese person. When a Vietnamese person talks to me, I now feel like a little kid because I can't understand what they're saying. I can't communicate. That's how crazy that is, that people don't think about. Like your language, your culture is so important. Like I was embarrassed for a long time when I was a kid and I had to change my mindset. Now I'm very proud to be Vietnamese. But what sucks is it's the difference being proud of Vietnamese and then you talk to another Vietnamese person and you get humbled like, dang, I don't know any Vietnamese. And then they look at you as like, you're not even Vietnamese, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what's hard because it's like that.
They don't. If they knew your story, it's like that's just like
right. So I make my son, like my son does Korean school every Saturday because my wife speaks Korean. I'm like, I told my wife, rain or shine, our kids need to speak 2 languages because you lose your sense of self. I was so much a Twinkie growing up, and now I'm kind of like more comfortable in my skin, being proud. Like I couldn't share the story in my 20s. You know what I mean? Like I was not proud. Like, but now I'm like proud of my heritage, my culture, whatever you call it. But it takes a while in life to get to that point.
Well, I think this next phase of your life might be a time where you can take some. You got some extra time to do a class or two. It's never too late.
Rosetta
Right?
Stone still right?
We have a painting that's been donated. I think that one thing is that I think a lot of people see money as like this root of evil, right. But I don't think many people understand just like how much influence that can happen through charity, through like right. just the positive things that the only way I met you is due to the fact that another customer gave me a referral from you. Right. A customer that I've helped do kind of through solar, they passed it. Yeah, if you were looking for someone who's actually going to care about you, right? Who doesn't just want to use your money and just, okay, cool, here's like, who's actually going to really take the time and really make sure you're educated on how this process goes, then you need to talk to Mr. Dinh. Yeah. This painting was kind of just a representation of how a transfer of money in hands, right? Solar to me or me to the solar to the customer, and then the information to be able to sit down with you and now be able to, help me through my journey. It has literally changed my life in a positive way. So I hope that this painting can be a kind of representation of something positive that money has happened in not just obviously in your life, but in life as well.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And what's crazy is like I saw this recent thing with Oprah, and Oprah's like as successful as you can get, but she said that she's a great manifester. So she said one of the reasons why she's so successful is she pictures something, she can attract anything she wants. So she goes, I want $1 billion. She knows how to attract it. So it's the same thing with money. It's just like when you learn like how to attract it and like the secrets of it, like the book, The Secret or Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Like a lot of those books teach you how to have that right mindset to be able to attract it. So that's really cool.
Thank you, Mr. Dinh, for being on the show. Thank you for everyone who's joined us. Where can people find you? How can people connect with you? I know you kind of shared it already, but if you don't mind, we'll put it in the description. But
yeah, follow me on TikTok and Instagram, James the Lender. And through there, I have a link in my bio. You can reach out to me. You can do a Calendly. So in my bio, you can set up like a 15-minute convo. And You can email me. I get emails. I get clients from all across the country that
Yeah.
reach out. Like I've gotten people from Georgia, from Florida, from Tennessee, from New Jersey, and they found me on social media. And they reach out and just providing value. Like a lot of these people, they just want advice.
Yeah.
And like you learn in life, the more value you give to other people, the more your worth will come. You know, your money's just the byproduct of the value you give upon people. So never worry about money in terms of like I'm never worried about making money because I know that my value is helping people, and through that people you get rewarded. But never lead the way with money. You know, there's a book called The Go-Giver. It's another good one. Where when you lead the way of helping people and being the person of value of helping, you have to lead with helping, because that's when people go, okay, I see value in you because you're helping me. Not like, hey, like, look me up, I can get you a loan. You know what I mean? Like no one cares, because people care about what you can help them, and then that point is when they reach out to you.
This information used to be very hard to get, you know?
Right.
You know, you have to pay a lot of money to be able to get to these. Now, people like you giving out this information for free. I mean, it's just, I think the giver is a great title for your life.
Go giver.
Thank you guys for joining us. We really appreciate those who kind of tuned in, and and this is obviously the never-ending story of him, and we're excited to kind of archive that and put that one in the book. So happy Thursday. You know, let's get after it.